Hey, good afternoon. Happy Monday to everyone. This is Jay with Bikes Kill Cancer. It's kind of crazy. Just 3 weeks ago, I was getting ready for the Colorado to Utah 125-mile gravel race, and that got canceled the night before. Wish I'd checked my emails before I went to bed. That's a whole nother story. And shortly thereafter, I get an email, or around that same time, I get an email from the folks over at First Descent saying, hey, we got a spot for you at Leadville 100. So change of plans really. And the last 3 weeks has been the first block of my training for Leadville 100. It was actually supposed to be sort of the last training block before I headed down to Santa Fe for a gravel Grand Fondo and then the road fondo the next day. Still going to do that in a couple of weeks, but just excited that I get to take what I thought was going to be just sort of a season of doing different rides and races here and there into a very, very focused summer. That being said, I just mentioned I have just finished up a 3-week block, and I'm just going to, in a minute, turn on the computer and show you sort of what that 3-week block has looked like for me. Not a perfect block, but that doesn't matter because we're still ways out, and overall some really good quality training, just not quite as much time and maybe quite as much effort that I wanted in some of the weeks, but we'll get to that in just a second. So let's head on back inside. I'll open up the laptop and we'll take a look at things. See you inside. All right, now that we're inside, let's take a look at the 3 different training apps that I mentioned in an earlier video. And that's going to be Strava, Training Peaks, and Garmin Connect. Both Strava and Training Peaks offer paid accounts. I have a paid Strava account. I'm using the free version of Training Peaks. And then I also use the free version, or the Garmin Connect, which is free for Garmin users. You just have to create an account, sync your devices, and the nice thing is you can then use Garmin Connect to sync across these other platforms. I'm not here to tell you one is better than the other. I think they all have their benefits. I mentioned that earlier, but I do want to use Strava to just sort of show you what I'm trying to achieve when I'm training. If you look over here in this corner where I'm circling with my cursor, you can see my training year to date. And what I'm looking for in my training is on a week-by-week basis, a gradual step up in effort or time spent on the bike working out. And you can see the first part of the year I did a really good job of that. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I was doing the weight endurance training plan, and it kept me on course. And then you can see it gets a little bumpy here. A couple of reasons for that. If I remember correctly, the weather got a little crummy. I was doing some traveling for work, so I just didn't have as much time as I wanted to put into things. And then you can see there's a big drop off right here, and I am almost positive that is a week-long work trip that I had to take. And then right here you can see the last couple of weeks, and we're sort of getting back to that step method, even though I missed a little bit on that last week, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So let's see how these last 3 weeks, or the first block of my training for Leadville 100, has panned out so far. So I'm going to switch over to my training log in Strava. And real quickly, I just want to share with you, all of these applications have some type of way to measure your effort throughout the week. And you can use that. Some people like to use just time. So 6 hours one week, 8 hours the next week, 10 hours the following week. That's good in terms of it just lets you know that you're putting in more time on the bike. But what it doesn't really show you is what kind of effort you're putting forth. So Training Peaks uses the gold standard of TSS, or the Training Stress Score. And that is based off of a combination of a couple of things, both power meter and heart rate, assuming that you're using both. If not, it'll use just your heart rate, if you have just a heart rate monitor strap, to give you a estimate of your training stress score. But to get the most accurate reading, you're going to want to use a power meter on your bike. I only use one on my road bike, and when I'm on the trainer downstairs. So when I'm doing things like on the gravel bike or the mountain bike, it's going to be an estimation of my TSS. And if we go back here to the first week of May, excuse me, let me try that again. If we go and look here at the first or the last week, second to last week of April, you can see I had a training stress score of 392. It really should have been a lot higher, but the Colorado to Utah race was canceled, 125-mile gravel event. That got canceled, so I ended up doing a shorter ride that day, only about 3.5 hours on the road. And then Sunday, I was traveling back to the Denver area. So 392, that probably would have been somewhere in the probably 500s if I had done the Colorado to Utah event. Going on to the second week, we want to see an increase in my TSS. And if we look down here, we'll see that I hit 712. It's a pretty big jump. But if you consider that I had been aiming for around 500 or maybe even 600 that week, it's really not that much of a jump. And then we go down to last week, very, very solid week. Even though my TSS was a little bit lower, I was super happy with the efforts that I put out. And so that's Training Peaks, and I just use it really mainly for the training stress score because I think it's a lot more accurate than what Strava uses. Strava uses something called total relative effort. And I don't know all the science behind this, but my understanding is it is more of a heart rate based effort. And I just know that the numbers that I put up on my relative effort tend to be a lot less. But you can see this sort of, and this goes from top to bottom in terms of this calendar, but you can see that week of Colorado to Utah event that got canceled, relative effort of 255, and then we bump up to 552. And then as I mentioned before, last week, even though it was planned to be a little bit harder week, in terms of that score was actually a little bit less. And then going all the way over to Garmin, you can also look at Garmin's calendar, and this will just give you a really nice summary of distance, time. And again, I usually mostly use Garmin to look at individual workouts. So if I wanted to look at like yesterday's workout, I could click on it, open it up, and obviously get a map there, as well as I can get some really nice profile charts of elevation. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I can overlay some of these. I can look for some consistency. So this was a heart rate based workout, and I was trying to keep my heart rate right between 130 and 140 beats on each one of those 5-mile effort climbs. So not a power-based workout, but a heart rate-based workout. And you can see nice and consistent all the way across. All right, so that's kind of what I look for on basically a monthly basis, right? 3 weeks of progressive effort, and then that fourth week is a rest. So as you can see, we went through that data in a very sort of broad sense, and you can tell that sometimes weeks just don't work out the way you want them to, and you have to be flexible and agile, really. There's nothing you can do about when life gets in the way, races get canceled, the weather doesn't cooperate with your big ride, whatever it is. You have to just go with what you got and make the best of it. And, we're still early into the season right now, so I'm not concerned that my 3-week block went as well as I went. We are in a rest week. I am trying to be more mindful about my rest weeks, and I'm going to talk about that in probably my next video, so stay tuned for that one. Appreciate you watching, and don't forget, click the subscribe button. I never know where it is. If you'll just click it, that would be awesome, and I appreciate you watching. Take care. Good miles today, good miles. Good miles today, good miles. Good miles today, good miles.